All right, welcome to the deep dive, where we take a whole bunch of sources and kind of boil them down just for you. It's like, you get all the good stuff, all the key insights and those aha moments without actually having to go through all the pages yourself. So today, we're going to be doing that with English grammar.
Yeah, so for this deep dive, you sent over some excerpts from Martin Hewing's Advanced Grammar in Use, which
Yeah.
is quite a comprehensive book, really aimed at people who are already pretty comfortable with the language. So our mission today is to sort of pick out those really fascinating and useful bits.
Exactly. Yeah. And really shed light on those tricky parts that can sometimes, even if you're a native speaker, you're like, wait, how does that actually work? So, where do we even begin with all this?
Well, let's start with something familiar. How about present and past continuous tenses? You might think you've got those down, but trust me, there's more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, just looking at this here, one thing that stood out to me was how the present continuous can be used to describe like regular actions at specific times. It's not just for something that's happening right this second.
That's right. So, like, they give the example, at 8 o'clock, I'm usually driving to work, so phone me on my mobile. It's not that you're driving right at that moment, but it's like a routine, a regular occurrence.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like emphasizing the habitual nature of something within a particular time frame, right?
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you see how it's used with adverbs like constantly or always, but to express, like, disapproval.
Oh, yeah, right. So it's not just saying how often something happens, it's adding this emotional layer to it, like frustration or annoyance.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're constantly changing your mind. Or using it in the past, was Olivia always asking you for money too? It's like
Right.
the grammar itself is conveying that extra bit of feeling.
That's so cool how you can do that just with the way you structure the sentence. It's subtle but effective, right? Now, in terms of the past, the book also mentions how past continuous and past simple kind of work together in storytelling. It's like the past continuous is setting the scene, describing an ongoing situation, and then bam, the past simple comes in to describe a single completed event that interrupts that scene or takes place within it.
Yeah, a good example they give is Erica dropped her bag while she was getting into her car.
Yeah.
So you have this ongoing action getting into the car, which is past continuous, and then this sudden event, dropping the bag, in past simple. It's a great way to make a narrative vivid and dynamic.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like you can almost picture it happening as you read it, right? And what's also interesting is that the book says that for certain verbs, you can actually use either the past continuous or past simple when talking about intended actions, that didn't actually end up happening.
Right. That's a bit of a tricky one. And it often comes down to whether you want to highlight the intention or just the fact that it wasn't completed. Like, I was going to call you yesterday versus I meant to call you yesterday. Subtle difference, but still.
Right, right. Oh, and this next part is really interesting, especially for anyone who wants to tell a good story. Using the past simple for a sequence of past events. When you're telling a story or describing a series of things that happen one after the other, the past simple is your go-to tense.
Yeah, it creates that sense of chronological order. The source lists a whole string of past simple verbs. I moved, I learned, the property developer decided, I heard, I foresaw, a property developer bought it, I nearly gave up, I put together enough money, it was empty. Each verb pushes the story forward step by step.
Oh, I see what you mean. Each past simple verb acts like a stepping stone in the timeline of the story, and it really helps keep the narrative clear and engaging. And I guess this really matters for anyone who wants to write a story, a blog post, or even just tell an anecdote in conversation. Getting those tenses right can make a huge difference.
Totally, yeah. Using tenses strategically is like being a conductor of your narrative. You get to control the pacing and emphasis.
I like that, the conductor of your narrative. That's a
Right.
great way to put it. Okay, now for a topic that often causes a bit of head scratching, perfect tenses.
Ah, yes. The present perfect and the past simple. These two are like that couple who always seem to be bickering.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. They can be quite confusing, even for experienced language users.
Well, the book does a good job of explaining how they actually complement each other, especially when you're dealing with those since clauses. The key idea is that the present perfect often connects a past event to the present moment, kind of bridging the gap between then and now.
Oh, okay, so like this example. Maria hasn't been able to go swimming since she fell in the river. So falling in the river was a past event, but its consequence, her inability to swim, continues to the present.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of perfects, it's worth mentioning the present perfect continuous. Now, this one can be a bit tricky because sometimes it's actually more appropriate to use the present perfect or even the past simple instead.
Right. They use the example about influenza research. It's like you have to really think about whether you want to emphasize the action as ongoing or the completion of it, or maybe even the duration of it as a whole. It's all about what aspect of the timeline you're trying to emphasize.
Yeah, and sometimes people get a little too carried away with the present perfect continuous,
Mm.
especially when a simpler form would do the trick.
Makes sense. So it's all about choosing the tense that most accurately reflects the time perspective you want to convey, right?
Absolutely. Now, how about we peer into the future and talk about those future time expressions?
Future time expressions. Oh boy. That's where things can get really interesting.
One of the first things the source clarifies is the difference between be going to and will. Be going to is often used for predictions based on current evidence, something you can actually see or sense happening right now. So like if you see those storm clouds gathering, you might say, oh man, it's going to rain.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And for predictions that are more based on expectations, hopes, or beliefs, we typically use will.
Exactly. It's less about concrete evidence and more about what we anticipate or believe will happen. Like, I imagine the stadium will be full, or I bet nobody will eat that cake.
And informally, we often use the present continuous for future arrangements, especially those involving going or coming. Instead of saying, I'm going to go to town on Saturday, we just say, I'm going to town on Saturday. It's just more natural in everyday conversation.
It is. And when we're talking about events that are scheduled to happen in the future, like exam results coming out or the start time of a concert, the present simple often takes center stage. Things like our exam results get announced on the 20th of August, or the concert starts at 7:30. These are fixed points in the future.
And for those general predictions where there's no present evidence or a set schedule, we usually stick to will plus the infinitive like, I think it will rain tomorrow, without any particular reason for thinking so.
Yeah, here's one that might seem a bit intimidating at first. The future perfect continuous. It's used to emphasize the duration of an activity up to a particular point in the future.
Right. So you might say something like, by this time next year, I will have been living in this city for 10 years, really highlighting that continuous period of living in that city leading up to that future point.
And, it's fascinating how we can actually use the future continuous, future perfect, and even the future perfect continuous to talk about our beliefs and
Yeah.
what's happening right now. Like, he won't be using his car today. He went to work by bike. It's a present deduction based on a past action.
Oh, that's a good example. And what about phrases that are similar to be about to?
Oh, yeah. Those are good to know. The book mentions be on the verge of, be on the brink of. They all have that sense of something being imminent, like it's just about to happen.
Right, right. It's like that feeling of anticipation, like something is about to change. And there's also that subtle difference between was or going to and was or to when talking about, things that were planned but didn't actually happen.
Yeah, that's a bit of a nuanced one. But basically, was it or going to is often used for unfulfilled intentions, while was or to often appears in more formal contexts, like when talking about official plans or arrangements that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the book notes how be supposed to is often used in less formal situations.
Yeah, like I was supposed to go to the party, but I got sick. That definitely sounds more natural than I was to have gone to the party.
Absolutely. So all these ways of talking about the future, it really shows the flexibility and precision of the English language, doesn't it?
It does, and I think for anyone learning English, this is where things can get really tricky. Okay, let's move on to modals of ability and permission. Words like can, could, be able to, and be allowed to.
Ah, yes. The modals. They might seem interchangeable sometimes, but there are subtle differences that are important to understand. Can is your basic go-to word for present ability or possibility.
Hmm.
Could can refer to past ability, or sometimes it's just a more polite way to say can when you're asking for something.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about be able to?
Be able to is often used when can or could don't fit grammatically, like with perfect tenses. For instance, we were able to finish the project before the deadline. You wouldn't say could in that case. And then you have be allowed to, which, as you can guess, is all about permission.
Right. So you could say something like, back then, children weren't allowed to stay up late, which emphasizes the lack of permission.
Exactly. And in those negative sentences, well, both couldn't and weren't allowed to can express a lack of permission. Couldn't can also just mean lacking the ability to do something, like I couldn't open the jar is about ability, while I wasn't allowed to open the jar is about permission.
Okay, I'm starting to see the nuances here. It's fascinating how even small changes in these modal verbs can convey such different meanings.
It is, isn't it? Now, this next bit I find particularly fascinating, the use of will and would for habits and typical behavior.
Oh, yeah. I've always found that interesting too. It's like they're not just about the future anymore, they're also about describing patterns of behavior.
Yeah, exactly. So will, when we're talking about the present, and would,
Yeah.
when we're talking about the past, can paint a picture of someone's characteristic actions.
Like, he would always offer to help. That describes a recurring helpfulness in the past.
Exactly. And their negative counterparts won't and wouldn't work in a similar way. Describing what someone typically doesn't do, like she wouldn't tell me what was wrong, describes a habitual reluctance to share.
Right. Right. And it's funny how in spoken English, you can even add stress to will or would to criticize those habitual
Oh,
actions.
absolutely. Like, he will leave his clothes all over the floor. That definitely has a disapproving tone to it. And what's even more interesting is how will can be used to express disapproval of a single past action.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you will go out without a coat, of course you'll catch a cold. It's like saying, if you insist on doing that, it's quite a subtle but effective way to show disapproval.
It is. Now, here's a distinction that often trips people up. The difference between used to and would. Used to is for past states that have changed, while would is for repeated actions in the past.
Okay, so you'd say, I used to live in London because that state has changed. But you'd say, every Sunday we would go for a walk in the park to describe a repeated action in the past.
Exactly. And it's crucial to remember that neither used to nor would should be used when you're being specific about how many times something happened or when a single event took place at a particular time in the past.
So instead of saying, I used to go to the cinema 3 times last month, you would say, I went to the cinema 3 times last month, using the simple past for that specific past event.
Right. Now, how about we delve into the realm of possibility? Let's talk about those wonderful modal verbs, might, may, and could. They all convey different shades of how likely something is.
Yeah, it's like they're all suggesting that something is possible, but the level of certainty or uncertainty varies, right? And it's often the context that helps us understand just how strong that possibility is.
And of course, we have the past forms might have, may have, could have, which express past possibilities or deductions about what might have happened. Like, she might have gone to the library, I'm not sure. It's like looking back and considering alternative possibilities.
It's like those what if moments, right? Now let's move on to another set of modals. Those that deal with necessity and obligation. Need, have to, must, should, and ought to. These are always interesting because they can be so subtle in their differences.
Yeah, there are definitely nuances to be aware of. And the book points out that need is kind of unique because it can be both an ordinary verb and a modal verb.
Oh, right. So you can say, I need a cup of coffee, where need is a regular verb. But you can also say, you needn't worry, where need functions as a modal verb, usually in negative sentences.
Exactly. And needn't have is used for past actions that turned out to be unnecessary, like I needn't have brought an umbrella, it didn't rain.
Mm.
It highlights that the action was unnecessary in hindsight.
Right. And it's interesting how must and have to both express necessity, but there's a subtle difference in the source of that necessity.
Yeah, must often conveys a stronger sense of the speaker's personal authority or internal conviction, while have to suggests an obligation that comes from an external rule or circumstance. So, I must finish this report tonight is more about personal commitment, whereas I have to finish this report tonight implies an external deadline or requirement.
Oh, that's a helpful distinction. And should and ought to are more about recommendations or probability. But a key takeaway from the book is that for making strong conclusions based on evidence, we use must, not should or ought to.
Absolutely. So if you see someone shivering, you'd say, they must be cold, not they should be cold. It's a logical deduction based on what you observe.
Okay, now let's tackle another grammar giant, the passive voice. It's often presented as just a simple transformation of the active voice, but it's actually much more than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about flipping the subject and object. It's a stylistic choice, a way to shift emphasis and bring a different element of the sentence to the forefront.
Right, so instead of saying the storm damaged the roof, you could say the roof was damaged by the storm, putting the emphasis on the roof, which is the thing that was affected.
Exactly. And what I find really interesting is that sometimes you can even use verbs that have related nouns as the subject of a passive sentence. So, They will complete the installation of the new software can become the installation of the new software will be completed. It shifts the focus to the installation itself.
Oh, that's a clever way to manipulate the focus of a sentence. And the book also points out that you need to be careful with verbs that are followed by prepositions. Those prepositions usually need to stick with the verb, even when you switch to the passive voice.
Right, so the police are dealing with the problem becomes the problem is being dealt with by the police.
Yeah.
That preposition with stays put.
Got it. And those passive reporting verbs, those are quite common too, right?
Very common. Phrases like, it is thought that, or the suspect is believed to be. They're really useful for reporting information without having to explicitly state who holds that belief or suspicion.
Okay, now let's talk about those verbs that always seem to go hand in hand with certain prepositions. It's like they're inseparable pairs.
Oh yeah, those verb plus preposition combinations.
Hmm.
They can be tricky to learn, but they're so important for getting your meaning across accurately. Like, you deal with a problem, you aspire to a goal, you rely on someone. The preposition is an integral part of the verb's meaning.
Right, it's like they come as a package deal, and then you have verbs that are followed by an object and then a prepositional phrase, like associate something with something or put something on something.
Yes, those are important too. And then some verbs can actually take two objects, either directly or with a preposition. Like you can give her the book or give the book to her. The meaning's basically the same, but the structure is slightly different.
And what about verbs that can be followed by either the ing form or the possessive plus ing construction?
Ah, yes. Those are interesting. For some verbs like resent, dislike, or imagine, you often have a choice. You can say, I resent him leaving early, or I resent his leaving early. The possessive form is often considered a bit more formal.
Okay, I see. It's like a way to add a touch of formality to your speech. Now let's talk about verbs that are followed by infinitives, either with, to, or without.
Right, so after verbs like want, hope, decide, we always use the infinitive with to. I want to go. I hope to see you soon.
But after verbs of perception, like see, hear, and feel, and also after make, have, and let, when they describe a completed action, we use the bare infinitive without to.
Exactly. So you'd say, I saw her leave the house, not I saw her to leave the house.
Okay, those are good to remember. Reporting speech is another area where things can get a bit complex.
It is. And it's not just about shifting the tenses back. It's about understanding the nuances of how to report different types of statements and questions.
Right. The general rule is that when you report what someone said, you usually shift the verb tenses back one step in time. But there are exceptions, of course. Like if the situation you're reporting is still true or relevant at the time of reporting, you might not need to change the tense.
Exactly. And those modal verbs, they often change in reported speech, too. Can might become could, will might become would, and so on. But sometimes the modal in the reported speech reflects the speaker's current perspective, even if the original statement didn't have that modal verb.
Ah, that's a tricky one. And when reporting questions, we usually use words, if or whether, to embed the original question into the reported statement.
Right. And it's also crucial to remember the difference between say and tell. You tell someone something while you say something without necessarily directing it at a specific person.
Moving on to relative clauses, those are essential for adding detail and precision to our writing and speech.
Absolutely. They allow us to provide extra information about nouns without having to start a whole new sentence. We have defining relative clauses, which are essential for identifying the noun, and non-defining relative clauses, which provide additional but non-essential information.
And we use relative pronouns like who, whom, which, that, and whose to introduce those clauses.
And sometimes you can even omit the relative pronoun altogether, especially in defining relative clauses when the pronoun acts as the object of the clause.
Right. And we can also use participle clauses and infinitive clauses as a kind of shorthand for relative clauses, making our sentences more concise and elegant.
Participle clauses, with their ing and aid forms, can add a lot of information in a very compact way, and they often function similarly to words like when, because, or while. And we can use with plus a noun phrase to introduce reasons like, with the traffic being so bad, we were late.
And then there's without plus in way, which can indicate an action that didn't happen or have a meaning similar to although not or unless.
Right, like, I left the house without locking the door, or without realizing it, I had offended her.
Okay, now for a quick word on reflexive pronouns. These are words like myself, yourself, himself, and so on. They're used when the subject and object of a verb are the same person.
But it's important not to overuse them. If there's a separate direct object, you usually just use a regular personal pronoun. So you'd say, I washed my face, not I washed myself.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about one and ones? Those little words can be quite handy.
Oh, definitely. They're great for avoiding repetition. Instead of saying, I like the red car, not the blue car, you can simply say, I like the red one, not the blue one.
And they can often be omitted altogether afterwards, like which and superlatives. So, which book do you want? I want the biggest one. Or even just, I want the biggest.
Now, quick tip for sounding more natural in English conversation, those short answers.
Right? Like, yes, I am. Or, no, I haven't. They're so common and efficient. And that so plus auxiliary plus subject structure is a great way to express agreement or confirmation. Like, if someone says, it's a beautiful day, you can reply, so it is.
I remember those little substitution words. Do so, be, and have. They're great for avoiding repetition and making your speech flow more smoothly.
Oh, yeah, like, she promised to call, but she hasn't done so yet. Done so neatly replaces called.
And ellipsis is another way to make your language more concise and natural. It's simply the omission of words that are understood from the context. It's especially common in informal speech.
Like, instead of saying, did you see the film? You might just say, see the film.
Exactly. Now, such plus a noun is another useful structure often used to refer back to something previously mentioned, and it essentially means of this or that kind.
And then we have those all-important purpose clauses, which explain why something is done. We can use infinitives, phrases like in order to and so as to, or clauses starting with so that or in case to express purpose.
And those clauses of contrast, they're all about highlighting differences between ideas or situations,
Yeah.
using words like although, though, despite, in spite of, and whereas.
And let's not forget those conditional clauses, the if-then structures that allow us to explore all sorts of possibilities, both real and unreal. We have those different types of conditionals with specific verb tenses, and we can even use alternatives to if, like unless, and as long as.
Connectors and linking words like however, therefore, nevertheless, and consequently, are like the glue that holds our sentences and ideas together, making our writing and speech more cohesive and coherent.
And those prepositions, they're like the unsung heroes of grammar, aren't they? They tell us where things are, when they happen, and why they happen.
Absolutely. We have prepositions of place, time, cause, reason, purpose, and exception. And it's worth noting that many nouns and adjectives have their favorite prepositions that they like to hang out with.
Like you have an interest in something, you're afraid of something, you're good at something. The preposition is essential for completing the meaning.
And then we have those interesting there and it structures. They can be really helpful for shifting the focus in a sentence and adding emphasis where we want it.
Right. There is a problem introduces the existence of a problem. And those cleft sentences with it are great for highlighting a particular element, like it was John who broke the vase, puts the focus on John.
And lastly, we have inversion. That's where we change the usual subject-verb order, often for dramatic effect or emphasis, like, never have I seen such a beautiful sunset.
Wow, so we've covered a lot of ground here. It's amazing how much complexity and nuance there is in English grammar, even in those seemingly simple structures.
It really is. And I think the key takeaway for anyone listening is that understanding these finer points of grammar is not just about being correct. It's about being a more effective communicator, being able to express yourself more clearly and precisely, and to interpret the nuances in what others are saying.
I completely agree. It's like having a whole toolkit of linguistic devices at your disposal, ready to be used for greater clarity and impact.
So for you listening, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Now that you've delved into some of these advanced grammar concepts, try paying attention to how they're used in the language you encounter every day. You might be surprised by how much more you notice, and how a deeper understanding of grammar can enrich your experience of language as a whole.
That's a great point. It's like you're suddenly more aware of the intricate workings of language, and that can be a really enriching experience. Well, we encourage you to delve deeper into the source material if you're interested, and to continue exploring the fascinating world of English grammar. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.